You are listening to a special episode of Pass the Chipotle, the show that will take you to discover the edible treasures of Mexico. My guests this week, two social and gastronomic entrepreneurs, Virydiana Velarde from Merci, Mercado, and Robert Nathan, founder of the charity Little Herds based in Austin, Texas, who are changing our perspectives about adding insects into our diets. This is your host, Rocio Carvajal, food historian, cook, and author. You can find more information about this project at passthechipotle.com. Find the show on Twitter as Chipotle Podcast. My guests this week can be reached at mercymercado.com, where you can purchase great quality artisan food products, and littleherds.org. In this website, you can find all sorts of resources to get you started into the delicious world of edible insects. This week's special episode of Pass the Chipotle features two very special guests who are helping transform the way people understand and engage with food, but more specifically, a source of food that has for millennia been deeply rooted in the gastronomic traditions of many countries. I am referring to entomophagy, or the consumption of edible insects. The 2030 United Nations Agenda for the Sustainable Development Goals pays special attention to achieving food security, ending hunger, and promote sustainable agriculture. And this is not a minor problem, as 1 in 9 people in the world are malnourished. That makes it 795 million in total, and is the annual cause of death for 3.1 million children. Food security is a complex problem, but it's reversible, and more importantly, it is preventable. Malnourishment and food crises aren't exclusive to the developing world. It is estimated that between the US and Europe are 14.7 million people suffering from food scarcity. That is, they don't have enough food. Latin America has 34.3 million people affected, and Asia has the largest number, rising to 511.7 million people in crisis. Finding sources of sustainable food is crucial, and rethinking the global farming industry is essential. Farming insects has proven to be one of the most successful models with greater benefits for both our health and the environment, because insects require 12 times less feed than cattle. Insect husbandry, quote-unquote, produces 1,200 eggs a month versus just one calf a year. An insect colony requires 235 meters squared less than cattle. And if that isn't enough to convince you about the benefits of farming insects, between 25 and 80% of an insect's body contains edible proteins. I had a fascinating talk with Robert Nathan Allen, founder and director of a certified educational charity based in Austin, Texas. Little Herds' work has been centered on teaching children and the public about the benefits of consuming insects. And also joining me was Virydiana Velarde, co-founder of Merci Mercado, an online boutique specialized in exceptional ingredients and artisan products, many of which include edible insects. And now, I will let you to the interview.
Thank you so much for having us on today. We're very excited to be able to share with your audience.
Thank you, Rocio. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Now, Nathan, let me begin by asking something to give the listeners some background about you. How did you go from international studies to the food industry, and how your involvement in entomophagy and sustainable insect farming developed? I can see some threads here and there, but please tell us how you got where you are now.
Yeah, it's actually a rather funny story of, I think, just a perfect happenstance. After I graduated from school, I moved to Austin and had some great unpaid internships, and eventually just went back to bartending to pay the bills. And I was a bartender for a few years. I had no background in entomology or farming or agriculture or food science. And I think conceptually, I knew that people in other countries ate insects and that they were a protein source if I was lost in the woods and starving or something, but I'd never considered it a food, not an unusual way to view them from an American stance. And in 2012, my mother sent me a video as a joke saying, "This looks like something you and your dad would try, but no thank you." And it talked about eating insects. The video did a great job of laying out the nutritional benefits of insects, the resource efficiency of farming the insects, the fact that people eat them all over the world and have been doing so for generations, millennia. And finally, it talked about abstracting insects for a hesitant Western consumer into insect powders or insect flowers. And so, I was already very interested in sustainability, in our agricultural production systems and how we can feed more people with less. And so I just took it very seriously, and I thought it was a great idea. I started researching it more, and at this time in 2012, there were no farms in North America that were specifically farming insects for human consumption. There were no products on the market, at least in the U.S., besides those novelty, scorpion lollipops or candied ants that have been around for decades. And so, I was really amazed that no one had really taken this idea further. And so I started, cold calling entomology departments and saying, "Hey, I want to serve bugs on the menu in Austin. What do I do?" And got some really interesting replies. Eventually, I was connected with a lot of the researchers and academics who have been talking about this idea for decades within academia. It just hadn't really spilled into the popular, imagination. And so I ended up meeting a lot of the entrepreneurs that are now the industry's leaders. Some of these folks that are now running insect farms and creating insect protein bars and chips and cookies and pastas that are available for purchase now. So yeah, it really kind of came together. I saw that there was a need for public awareness and public education, resources for parents or for educators or even for policymakers on how we can start looking at this critically, not looking at insects as a pest to be feared, but rather as a resource that's been untapped.
Now that I come to think of it, it was a very brave decision for you to do it in Texas, of all places.
Well, no, and you were mentioning earlier, some of the statistics about hunger and food insecurity, and especially here in America, I think we often turn a blind eye to our own domestic issues, and we like to think of that as a problem that other people are dealing with. But even here in Texas, 1 in 5 households is considered food insecure because they don't get the nutrients they need through the food that they have access to, whether it's overly processed or if they live in a food desert and don't have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. Mm-hmm. And 1 in 4 children in Texas grows up in a food insecure household. If 25% of the next generation is growing up without the nutrients, the proteins, the fats that they need for their brain to develop, for them to be able to pay attention and get a good education, we're really selling that next generation short. And what we've really found with Little Herds is that children are very receptive to this idea. They don't have that psychological taboo against eating insects that most adults have acquired over time.
Of course, yeah.
And so especially the youngest children, they will walk up to a bowl of crickets having no idea what it is and start chowing down on the insects while the parents are standing behind them. They're the ones that are freaking out. And it's great because I can say, no, look, it's healthy, it's good for the environment, they're more humane than other animal options, and your kid obviously loves them. Imagine if getting them to eat their Brussels sprouts or broccoli was this easy. And the parents are usually okay with it at that point. And a lot of them, once they see how much the kid likes it, because if it didn't taste good, the kid would spit it out. Then the parents are more interested and they're more amenable to the idea of trying something with insects in it. And so I think that really helps, open up the door for starting those conversations about how we can really, bring our agricultural food system in line with the values that we have as a greater population.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was actually a very interesting point I wanted to highlight on the work you're doing. It's your bet on providing like a thorough food literacy to children specifically. So if you want to really achieve a change that is sustainable, that is going to go like to the root, well, children are the group you want to target.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think of something like other foods, and from the American perspective, other foods that have been seen as disgusting or gross or even dangerous, something like raw fish and sushi in the 1960s in America, nobody ate raw fish. That was common knowledge that you didn't eat raw fish. And so sushi was a very strange and scary idea for a lot of people. And it took about 20 years for it to really become something that was considered more of a normal food. And now it's something that I can go to my grocery store and get at any time. So we know that there's a generational shift there that happened. And we see that again with insects. We see that children are more receptive, and that next generation of chefs and farmers and entrepreneurs and parents and consumers, if they can grow up with the idea of insects as a food being normalized in the same way that I grew up with sushi being normalized, then in 5, 10, 20 years, we have a situation where we not only have the means, but we have the demand for these types of sustainable proteins.
Absolutely. Now, I guess something you have in your favor, as opposed to precisely the example of sushi, is that there is way more awareness also from academia and from even international institutions to promote these type of projects. I remember back in 2013, the very famous Holt Prize chose a group called Aspire Food Group as winners of that year's prize. They pretty much started like an MBA group of students who got interested in edible insects, and they went ahead to develop a world-leading organization providing wonderful high protein and micronutrient insect-based products. And incidentally, well, of course, you became part of the team for a while. So, like, with all this involvement with this international sort of movement, I'm very curious about how it changed or inspired you to develop your own project.
Yeah, and you make a great point that the timing of this movement is very prescient. I don't think that if we were trying to convince people to eat insects 20 years ago, we would have had any success compared to what we've seen today. Like you said, our broader food conversations have already been shifting towards transparency and safety and nutrition and corporate responsibility. More and more people are asking where their food comes from, how it gets to their plate, what happens to it afterwards. And so we're already in a broader conversation looking at sustainability and nutrition and ethics. And all of these insects fit well into. So we're bringing this idea into the conversation not as a silver bullet, but as a puzzle piece that fits in with so many other puzzle pieces. And without this piece, we don't see a whole picture. And so the opportunity I had to join the Aspire Food Group team, after they won the prize in 2013, they started insect farming projects in Ghana and in Mexico, looking at how we could use insect domestication to work from wild harvesting practices towards a domestication model to ensure the availability of those insects year-round instead of only seasonally, and to allow people to farm those insects within their own homes and communities instead of having to go out and harvest those from the wild. So not only providing that food and economic security source year-round, but also preventing that biodiversity loss that we do already see happening in parts of the world where insects are being over-harvested as a food source. And so for me, when Aspire Food Group recognized that the U.S. was starting to talk about this, less of a gag or a novelty or a fad, less as a fear factor stunt or a reality show stunt, and more as an actual food resource that we just have to learn more about. They saw that Austin was an area that was very open and receptive to the idea. Little Herds was here. There was another startup called World Entomophagy that was the first company in the U.S. to really pilot the cricket flour or cricket powder. And so Austin just made a lot of sense. And the team started their first cricket farm here, and it was the first farm in the U.S. that was both farming insects for food specifically and processing them into those usable ingredients that could be taken by chefs and bakers or even home consumers and turned into other things. And so for me, going from the educational nonprofit aspects of Little Herds, it was a fantastic opportunity for me to join their team, start this farm, and really learn all of the ins and outs and the nitty gritty that a lot of these other entrepreneurs and startup farms are having to go through. I learned how you farm the crickets, not just on a small scale, but how you can scale that up to a commercial scale. All of the different hurdles and roadblocks that come, and all of the permitting and the regulations and the imports and exports and the hurdles of trying to process this ingredient that had never been commercially processed. There was no equipment designed for processing crickets, so we had to really create these processes from scratch ourselves. And then, of course, the interesting experience of trying to market this as a new product directly to consumers and educating the buying population. So after a year and a half with Aspire, I had learned a lot of the things that I'm now able to help other organizations and other startups with. And though I had a great experience with them learning all of these valuable tools and all this valuable knowledge, I realized that my personal passion was really to see this industry, this movement grow as a whole, and be able to promote all of the different players in the space instead of just one particular company. And so at the beginning of 2016, I left Aspire Food Group on good terms, and came back to Little Herds to grow it into a full-fledged organization. And Aspire Food Group has certainly been one of our supporters since then, along with all of the other startups and entrepreneurs in this industry. So it's been really inspiring for me to see, the industry grow not only in public perception, but also in its means of producing insects at a better price point, more efficiently, and creating a wider diversity of applications for these ingredients, so that now it's not just protein bars, it's chips and cookies and crackers and pastas and ingredients that can be used in a variety of ways.
Turning it into an ubiquitous and affordable product, no?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I also see another aspect that is radically different from previous generations when it comes to the way people engage and start businesses. Our generation and the current generations are now adding a very important ingredient that it was, if not dismissed, it just simply wasn't there like a key component, and that is social responsibility, as you very well said. And you, in a way, sort of found your call, trying to integrate a much more holistic. I like the concept of the world. I mean, I don't mean it in a hippie way, but like covering all the bases, sort of making sure everybody will benefit from the whole process.
Yeah, absolutely, and that has been key to our success. Our ability to look at this not as a specific solution for one problem, but like you said, holistically, we're looking at this as just an untapped resource. For so long, the Western mindset, and particularly the American mindset when it comes to insects, has been a pest to destroy, to be feared. And by showing people how we can use this in beneficial ways, whether it's as a food for people, as a feed for our pets, our dogs and cats, for a feed for our livestock that is more efficient and less damaging to the environment, or even applications beyond that, the potential for applications in biofuels, medical applications, and cancer research. There's all these different ways that insects as a resource can benefit our lives in a variety of ways. And in order for us to realize that potential, we have to shift the way that we think about the insects. And so, also to your point that the timing, and where we are now in the 21st century, we couldn't have done this without social media and the internet, the ability to share information with other people in other cultures in real time, and the ability for us to learn from cultures that have continued to use insects as a food. A core part of our mission is to dispel those misconceptions that a lot of Americans and Western food culture have regarding insects in other countries. A lot of people think of it as something that is, barbaric or a food of last resort, and that's really not the case. Over and over we see that in cultures where insects are continue to be used as a food, they're seen and celebrated as a traditional beloved food. And a lot of times the market price is higher than pork or beef or chicken. And so really educating the public here can help shift that perception. And then finally, with the advent of the internet and social media, and particularly something like crowdfunding, this industry has not been started by your multinational corporations, Pepsi and Coke and Frito-Lay. And none of these companies are creating products. This industry has been started by, idealistic entrepreneurs in their garage starting to farm crickets in their home, or doing crowdfunding campaigns. And it's the public that has said, yes, we believe in this idea. We're willing to put our money to bring these products to market. And so, just in the past 4 years, we've seen North America alone, something like 40 plus companies crowdfunding over $650,000 to bring a variety of products to market, do documentary films about these, to start farms. And so it's been truly inspiring to see that this is an idea that is really generating from a grassroots level. It's the public that is saying, I want my purchasing power to positively impact our health and the planet. And so I'm willing to help bring these products to market. And many of these companies have gone on to receive additional investments, and more of the broader food industry and agricultural industry is starting to recognize the potential for these tools, whether as a food or a feed. And it's starting to move past that bright line of no return, where it won't be considered a fad or a joke, where it's actually being legitimately identified as a solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that, they're on the other spectrum or the other side, not only the producers, there's this new class of very socially aware networks actually trying to bring more equity to the market. I can see the producers like you doing all that work, and I can see these new boutique shops trying to promote this. So in a way, both are educating me, they're educating us in being socially responsible with our choices. Well, who do we pay? Now, where do we put our money, and what impact is that money making? So that takes us to the other part of all this process, which is precisely projects like Merci, Mercado. Virydiana, I would really like you to share with the audience your experience of how did you come across starting this project, connecting producers and pretty much changing the perceptions of people about understanding of all these products beyond just being exotic.
The challenge here is always to reach as many people as possible, and for that reason, Merci Mercado is active in social media and always has participating in tasting events, so people get to know our company and products. And it's been challenging, to approach with people and try to change the way they think about insects, and so they can see something more produce, more approachable.
Because, although you are online, meaning people can purchase your products from anywhere in the world, people might not be very aware of the fact that in Mexico, we have a very big culture of eating insects. However, just like in America, they face different challenges, like understanding that protein not only comes from beef, but can come from insects. Here in Mexico, I suppose, like the cultural barrier to sort of introducing insects in your diet might be more related to class conception, like, I can afford meat, I don't need to eat insects, or, which have been the main challenges you have to face?
Well, I think the appearances matter at first, since we are talking about an insect, and for any new product in the market, there is a barrier to accept it. However, Merci Mercado has been successful in taking that barrier down when our potential customers learn first about the high quality of the product, the fact that it has been carefully selected, clean up, pre-cook, and dry up before packing. So when they see that the product looks friendlier as it is dehydrated, and second, when they see the benefits that you have mentioned before from sustainability, positive impact on the communities, and high protein content. And most importantly, when they try them, they realize the products are really tasty. So
on top of everything.
In our portfolio other products that incorporate grasshoppers or chapulines and red agave worms such as sal de gusano or worm salt and salsas, which has also helped overcome the mental barrier, and has allowed us, our company, to start promoting it.
So how did you come across each other? How did you partner up?
Part of Little Herds is that we work with a lot of different chefs. Because we understand that in many ways the chef is the ambassador for something like this, a new food. We saw this with sushi, where chefs were able to make it something desirable, even aspirational as a food. And there are numerous chefs around the U.S. who have really celebrated the Oaxacan tradition of chapulines, OML in D.C. Even here in Texas, in Houston, we have Hugo's. Chef Rick Lopez has had chapulines as a secret menu item. So if you know to ask for them, they will make chapulines tacos or chapulines salsa. And so when we work with these chefs, one of the things we're trying to do is get them to use insects, but then those chefs who already use insects, we're trying to learn where they get those insects from, so we can help supply other chefs. And so it was great that I was introduced to Merci, Mercado Mio through some of these chefs, and I was able to start having conversations with Virydiana and the hobby, and and it was great that they were so receptive to supporting Little Herd's activities. Very quickly they were sending us ingredients that before had been very difficult or very expensive for us to access, and this really allowed us to put those products like the chapulines and the salsas in front of the consumers to show them and let them taste them and see how delicious they are. And even just this last year, we had the 29th annual bug buffet at the Montana State University, and this was the first year that they had chapulines grasshoppers, because we were able to connect Mercado Mio and Merci Mercado to the event. We'll be highlighting their products at our 10th annual bug eating festival in Austin on June 10th. And we see some great, evidence in the broader media that these types of foods are starting to be more accepted. Recently, the Seattle Mariners, the baseball team, their stadium started working with a local company, and they started selling chapulines as a snack. I think the name of the little restaurant is Poquito. And so they debuted this and sold out the first night. And then they sold out the second night. And by the second night, ESPN and Sports News and Sports Center and all these, big national media outlets are talking about, the Seattle Mariners are selling grasshoppers and selling out. And they sold out 4 nights in a row because this item was so popular, which is inspiring. 4 or 5 years ago, I never would have imagined that. And so now they've even had to institute a limit on the number of orders that they'll sell every night. And so I think it's 312 orders are available each game, and that's to celebrate one of their favorite all-time players' batting average. So as we see these types of introductions to the broader public, and seeing how receptive the public is to it, I think more and more we're going to see more of those chefs, more of these opportunities for people to try them in very positive environments. When you try something like that at a ball game, it's a very inviting environment. It's very fun. It's very festive. If you eat them in a restaurant, you know that the chef does delicious food all the time. So it's a lot easier to try insects in those settings than, if I go up to you, a stranger on the street, and say, "Hey, eat some bugs." And you're like, "No, thank you, crazy hippie."
Yeah, cultural endorsement. Well, it has helped really a lot shifting, our perceptions and our attitudes towards food. In the case of Mexico and other insect eating cultures, is more about tradition and heritage and sort of recognizing that and in a way reconciling our identities from, being, we are so modern, we don't need to do this, as in like, well, this is great and has worked for millennia. So let's try it again. Here in Mexico, we have the case of Enrique Olvera, which is the founder of Pujol. In Tulum, René Redzepi and his pop-up version of Noma, which where they're both sort of promoting this idea from shifting to just culinary curiosity, which is something I think you both have come across, people who are just curious, to actually promote a deeper understanding of not only our local food system, but our global food system. I would like to know, for you both personally, which has been, I'm sure there's loads, I hope there's loads of moments that have been specifically, exciting, like reaching a milestone in your project personally. You've seen the results in people, in the community, or with your partners.
Okay, well, for me, bringing our products into the U.S. market and working with the small producers, chefs, organizations like Little Hearts and Food Lovers, and I always have enjoyed international gastronomy and promoting Mexican food and culture, as I'm Mexican, and being able to do that with people who share the same passion as the other co-founders and the rest of the people in the food industry, in a project that started incorporating the products that have been part of the culinary traditions in Oaxaca, Mexico, for centuries, like grasshoppers and again the agave worms, and the fact our project has a positive impact on our planet and also in the local community. So that is the most exciting part of the project for me.
So you found your place you found your international tribe, no?
Yeah, definitely. I love it.
That's great. Thank you. And you, Nathan?
That's a perfect segue, because I think really we've had some great milestones over the years, from successful crowdfunding campaigns to co-hosting the first U.S. conference on insects for food and feed. But really, I'm very proud of our most recent initiative. We have an awareness building campaign online, #BugsEndHunger. And this is a collaboration between Little Herds and a nonprofit in Colorado in the U.S. Called Seeds of Action. And we've been fortunate enough to have a huge number of the producers and the farmers in this industry, including Mercado Mio, Merci Mercado, as a big supporter for this. The goal of this campaign has been to raise awareness for how easy and delicious it is, how delicious insect products can be, and how easy it is to add those into a Western diet that may be a little hesitant. But the end goal of the project is to actually create a farming insects guide, something that can be a open source tool that can illustrate, using pictures and images, how to start farming insects on a very basic level, on a home scale. In this way, it can be easily able to cross language barriers. It can be used by people who are illiterate, and it can be easily customized to different insect species, different regions, and different cultures. And so, it's been overwhelming for us to have the support of organizations like Merci Mercado, and we now have over 40 plus companies that are all working on insects for food or feed, from countries around the world that are supporting this coalition, this initiative. And so the campaign is running from the beginning of May to the end of July, and just in the first 2 weeks, having dozens of these companies join us and publicly say, we believe in this project, we're willing to put our voice behind this, we're willing to put our product behind this. And we believe that the end goal of this project aligns with our values of building a more sustainable, more equitable food system, where people aren't being given a fish, they're being given the tools to start fishing. Rather, They're being given the tools to start farming their own insects.
So, in a way, your background in international studies has been very, very useful. No, you're
yes, come full circle a little bit.
That is really exciting, and many people beyond our immediate circles get to know about these things. You just see the results, which are great and fabulous, but there's also loads of people who can be inspired and learn from experiences like yours. You don't need to be extra special, because we are all special. You just need to find your passion, and just you don't have to have all the answers and all the solutions, but find people who can help you and walk with you that walk and grow together. I guess believing in your project and just pushing it.
Absolutely.
No?
One of the things we like to say is that the reason that Little Herds and this movement has really been so successful in the U.S. and in the broader global community is the idea of 1 + 1 = 3. I can do only so much myself, you can only do so much yourself, but if we combine our energy and our resources, we're not only preventing each other from reinventing the wheel, but that rising tide raises all boats, and we can see that over and over even in just the past few years, where openness and collaboration has led to much greater benefits and returns than individuals working within silos. And I think because this is a new industry, because we don't have necessarily the old boys club, the entrenched systems that we see with other agricultural sectors, and like I mentioned, so many of the people trailblazing in this movement are just passionate individuals. We've seen so many dividends of that openness and collaboration, and things have been able to be accelerated very quickly because people are willing to work together for that greater goal.
That's really inspiring. Both of your work, I find it absolutely inspiring. I really hope our listeners are taking notes. We're reaching the end of the interview. I want to thank you both so much for being on the show. I know you've got really tight agendas, so thank you for making the time. I wish you nothing but long-term success with your project, present and future. Thank you for sharing your intimate stories with the audience of Pasta Chipotle. And I would very much like you to tell people how can they reach you on social media, which are your accounts, websites, emails, if you have any upcoming event. We already mentioned some hashtags, but please, if you want to mention extra information, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, our products can be found easily on our website, which is mercado.com. And you can get them online, and we have presence all across the US, in some restaurants as well, and little stores here in New York. Next time you are visiting New York, visit any of the restaurants. We have some. You can take a look at our website, and you can find some of the restaurants there. And also you can email us at info@mercado.com. And checking our website, you can get through our links to Facebook and Instagram. Facebook is Merci Mercado US. And then you can also get our products through Little Herds and other places. And hopefully you can try them soon in any of the events. We are planning a cooking class, and take a look at our website for upcoming events. We hope that we can have a presence in Europe in the near future.
Oh, that would be very exciting. Okay, Nathan, how can they reach you?
So you can find out more information about Little Herds at littleherds.org, and that's littleherds.org. If you'd like to reach me, I'm at rna@littleherds.org. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/littleherds, on Twitter @littleherds, and on Instagram @little.herds. We're doing a bunch of events coming up. We're having our 10th annual Bug Eating Festival in Austin on June 10th. We're very excited to have Chapolinas from Merci Mercado at that event. We'll have some chefs that are doing some cooking demonstration using the products. Of course, as mentioned, you can also find their products through the Little Herds marketplace. We have, while we don't sell any products ourselves, many of the companies in the industry, like Merci Mercado, have provided Little Herds promo codes or links to affiliate pages. And when you purchase products through the Little Herds marketplace, you not only get a small discount, but they will donate a small portion of those sales back to our educational programs and activities. And then finally, you can find out more about the Bugs End Hunger campaign at bugsendhunger.com or by finding any of the mentions with hashtag BugsEndHunger.
Okay, that's great. I hope many people engage. Dear listeners, I really hope you have enjoyed this very interesting conversation and that has inspired you to get to know more about edible insects. Please go explore the range of ways you can engage with Little Herds and Merci Mercado. Try a few of their products, all of their products, and get involved in knowing more about edible insects, promoting edible insects, maybe in your school or your community. So please go engage with them. Thank you again, Virydiana and Nathan. It has been a real pleasure having you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, stay tuned and we'll be back with the show after this short break.
Continue your journey exploring Mexico's gastronomic heritage and traditions with SABOR. This is Mexican Food Magazine. The spring issue includes 6 full in-depth articles exploring the origins of Mexican traditional food, its staple ingredients and flavors that define it, and 5 delicious recipes to get you started into the wonderful world of Mexican cooking. Go to pasachipotle.com/magazine to take an exclusive preview of this issue. Purchase your digital copy now and enjoy it in all your devices. Go to pasachipotle.com/magazine and get ready to cook, learn, and enjoy Mexican food like you never imagined. Thank you for listening to this special episode of Pasa Chipotle, a bi-weekly show dedicated to the exploration of Mexico's delicious gastronomic traditions. Support this show on Patreon, the largest platform that connects creators with bright audiences like you. To find more information about the show and SABOR, this is Mexican Food Magazine, please go to pasachipotle.com. There will be a special blog post about this interview with free resources about edible insects and links to Merci Mercado and Little Herds. Don't miss the next episode where we will talk about Diane Kennedy, the English lady who came, saw, and was conquered by Mexico's gastronomy. We'll find out what the Habsburg emperors ate during the ill-fated Mexican reign. And continuing this special episode, we will talk about which are the squidgy, crunchy, and chewy insects that indigenous Mexicans ate way before it was cool. That's it for this week. Thank you for tuning in. Subscribe, rate, and share this show. Goodbye for me, or as we say in Mexico, hasta la próxima, amigos.